Imagine this. Your hard-earned tax dollars, money you sweated and sacrificed for, are funding drag shows in Ecuador, paying for studies on butcher dialects in Paris, because that's obviously a global priority, and, wait for it, financing a literal monkey opera. Yes, a monkey opera. And China healthcare. Because clearly, while you're worrying about rising grocery prices and potholes that could swallow your car, the government's top concern is making sure our simian friends hit all the right high notes. And trust me, the contenders are absolutely wild. So buckle up, because this is going to be both tragic and entertaining. Let's dive into Senator James Lankford's report on federal fumbles, a guide to how your money gets burned in the most ridiculous ways possible.
Last year, the State Department did a grant to Ecuador to host 12 drag shows in Ecuador with American tax dollars. Now, may have different opinions in this room on drag shows. I'm just asking the simple question: is the best use of American tax dollars to actually fund drag shows in Ecuador with U.S. tax dollars? I don't believe that it is.
What? I think the State Department want to export American values by sponsoring drag shows in Ecuador? Forget fixing potholes here. Our dollars are dancing in Ecuador. Priorities, right? Maybe next year we'll sponsor a disco in Nicaragua. However, the State Department defended the spending, saying, the program's goal is to promote tolerance. Next, you're going to find more entertaining from Senator Lankford.
National Science Foundation last year did a study of butterflies in Europe. So we funded with American taxpayer dollars a butterfly study in Germany where we paid a Swedish scientist to study butterflies in Germany. I'm not real sure why American tax dollars, that was the best use of that, but that was one of the grants that was done last year. Always popular, we had an almost, $350,000 grant to study smart toilets. Was one of the grants that we actually paid for with our federal tax dollars last year. We also had a grant that was done studying colonial Mexican soundscapes. Now, I'm sure colonial Mexican soundscapes are fascinating, but we paid for a researcher to travel to Mexico and then to be able to write a series about the sounds of colonial Mexico and how they could be used to be able to influence communities.
Thank goodness our government is looking out for America's bathroom future. Finally, a project worth flushing our tax dollars down the drain for. Apparently, Uncle Sam's all in on toilets that are smarter than our budget planners. Because, regular toilets just don't cut it anymore.
There was also a grant that was done last year. I've got to just walk this one through. This was at the Springfield Museum of Art in Missouri. There was a grant to be on a display, an installation in the exhibit in the museum called Yoko Ono Mend Piece. Now let me just read this to you. It's a simple white room where shattered cups and saucers are placed on a table and participants are asked to mend the fragments together using common household items like twine, glue, scissors, and tape, and the resulting works are displayed on nearby shelves as evidence of the power of collective action. If you like traveling to Paris and you go to a butcher shop in Paris, you may be fascinated to know since the 13th century, apparently butchers in Paris have come up with their own private language. It's like a super secret private language among butchers in Paris. Fascinating for the French to study, but unfortunately, the American taxpayers paid for a study of French butchers' private language for fear that it is diminishing and fading away. So the American tax dollars paid for this study in France to study the secret language of butchers in Paris. Can't tell you why.
So there you have it. Your tax dollars doing everything from funding drag shows in Ecuador to smart toilets for research, to a butcher dialect in Paris that only 5 people can understand. Next time you cut a check to the IRS, remember, somewhere out there, a European butterfly thanks you.
We, last year, did a study on helmets and seatbelts in Ghana to be able to study whether seatbelts and helmets were effective for saving lives in Ghana. We spent money in Ghana studying helmets to see if they're actually a good idea there. And amazingly, they discovered, yes, they are.
Breaking news. Helmets work. Thank goodness we traveled to another continent to confirm common sense. What's next? $1 million study to prove water is wet in Asia?
We also did an interview project that was almost $200,000 in Ghana to interview taxi cab drivers and truck drivers to ask them about how difficult driving has become with climate change. If it's harder to drive now in Ghana based on climate change, your tax dollars paid for that. And if you don't like that I'm discussing anything on climate change, and you may disagree with that, well, perfect, because there was also a fund that was done with your tax dollars in the National Science Foundation to study how to influence people that disagree on the issue of climate change, with a study that was done for $400,000, the study on pluralistic ignorance gaps in climate change, and to be able to determine how to speak to people, as the study says, who are ignorant on climate change, and to be able to re-educate them on that. So if you disagree on this issue, we're also studying how to be able to re-educate you on this issue.
Nothing says we're listening to your concerns quite like a $400,000 project aimed at proving you're wrong. Thanks, government, for showing us how to educate people who dare to have different opinions.
What else did we actually deal with? Well, of the trillions of dollars in debt that we have, recently we put $2.6 million into China to help pay for some of their health programs, and to be able to identify, maybe this is not a good idea if we have $30 trillion in debt. Maybe we need to find some areas to be able to cut back on. We could cut back on that, or maybe we could cut back on the grant that was given out to write about Russian screenwriters, that we actually paid someone to do research on Russian screenwriters to be able to release this project out so that people could study Russian directors and screenwriters. Well, what else do we do with our additional money while we're having just extra spending and time on this? How about lobster pot removal? Yep, we spent $500,000 in a special earmark to do lobster pot removal. Now, initially, it's actually listed in the bill as derelict lobster pots. Derelict lobster pots. That sounds really ominous, doesn't it? My understanding is it's lobster traps that are just out there that someone abandoned at some point. I would tell you, for those of us in Oklahoma, if you told me there's a lobster trap and there may be a lobster in it, and you can keep the trap and the lobster if you want to go get it, we would go get it. But instead, we're paying $500,000 in federal dollars to go pick up derelict lobster pots.
I don't know if you get angry or feel entertaining about how our tax dollars are spent insanely stupid by the federal government. I have a mixed feeling. Here is one of my most entertaining ones.
As we were digging through the different pieces that were actually done, I would tell you it was painful the moment when we ran across the monkey opera. We spent federal tax dollars on something called a monkey opera. Now, I'm not sure why we spent federal tax dollars on a monkey opera. I'm not sure what a monkey opera sounds like, but I would tell you, I think I've listened to a monkey opera on people's at-hold music before when I've called certain companies, that I think the hold music they have was actually monkey opera. But I have to ask the hard question, is this national defense? Is this educating our children? Is this health care? With $30 trillion in debt.
You heard that right. Your taxes funded a literal monkey opera. I'm not sure what it sounds like, but I imagine it's similar to the hold music you get when calling the IRS. And there you have it, folks. The federal government isn't just wasting your money, they're turning it into art, drag shows, and monkey opera. So next time you see your paycheck, remember, it's not just taxes, it's an investment in a world-class monkey opera. Bravo, government, bravo. Welcome to the land of opportunity, where your taxes are the punchline. Here is our leaderboard. What are yours? If you're as baffled as I am by this woke spending circus, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video. Together, let's demand smarter spending, or at least a monkey opera worth watching.